This is the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles.
I am thrilled to welcome Greg Cosell from NFL Films, NFL Matchup Show, czar of the film, czar of everything. Greg, thanks for joining us again. I appreciate it. I think last time we talked to you was maybe pre-draft. I think
it was pre-draft. Yes.
Yep. Before we went down the Mac Jones road.
Yeah.
So actually, let's sort of start there. First off, I want to say this is a very friendly space. It's a comforting space. There is no judgment. This is where I like to talk to smart people and get their opinions. And Greg and I have sort of discussed off air my opinions about Mac Jones so far. And I would just love to hear what Greg thinks so far of Mac Jones on film.
Well, I would answer it this way. I don't think there's a lot of mystery to what Mac Jones was coming out of college, and I don't think there's a lot of mystery to what he's doing now. I think that he's a timing rhythm player. I think he's decisive. I think he knows what he's looking at. The ball comes out. He does not have a big arm. He can't really drive the football, but he can navigate within the pocket to some degree because he's not really a stride thrower. He can throw without really striding into it, so he can throw when there's not a lot of space. I think that you have to, in some ways, set him up for throws. But I will say this, one thing that I think he has done well, and there are examples of this through these 7 games, I believe it is. Yep. I think that he's done a very good job of being able to recognize things post-snap when there has been some disguise and late movement. And I think it started week 1. I think he does see that quickly. I think he has an innate feel for seeing things. And therefore, he is able, as I said, Greg, to throw the ball to the right receiver at the right time with the necessary kind of throw. So I think we all, or I did anyway, watching his tape at Alabama, felt like he could do this. The big question, well, I guess I'd say this. What he is he's an executor and a ball distributor. And there's nothing wrong with that because every quarterback is a system quarterback. That has become a negative pejorative term, but that's the way the position is taught. And he's an efficient executor and a ball distributor.
One of the things we talked about pre-draft, and I think you sort of had the question, and from talking to a bunch of different evaluators, because I was high on Jones. I had him after Lawrence and Wilson. I believe the hype in Mac Jones, and I thought he would fit the Patriots perfectly. But one of the things we talked about is the whole, do you need the off-schedule throws to be successful in the NFL? Because there are some schemes that are almost dependent on it at this point in time. There are very few, like the Patriots scheme, where it's like, if we get that, that's gravy. But really, we want, what you do from the pocket is paramount for us. And in terms of Jones, I think, and I'm curious what you think. If you are that type of thrower, like say, the Brady, the Breeze, the Mac Jones, where, you're going to be under center and in the pocket, you have to find a way to make those special throws to be special as a quarterback. And I think, in my opinion, part of the outstanding opinion on Jones, and we just don't know. We don't know how is he going to evolve physically? Is his arm going to get stronger? Is he going to be able to make those type of throws when it counts? And we don't have a whole lot of examples right now, but I agree with you when that his arm strength looks fine when he has time to gather himself a little bit and definitely step into things. When he doesn't, sometimes it gets a little bit iffy, but is he going to develop that part of his arsenal to move into an elite status where now I think his ceiling is probably, from what we've seen, good, solid starting quarterback in this league? I'm just curious what you think about that.
Well, there's a lot to unpack based on what you just said. Let's start with the idea of having to be a second reaction improvisational player, because people flippantly now throw that out as if you cannot play quarterback in the NFL if you can't run around. And I think that that's too easy to say. You have to look at the process of playing the position. You know, it's very easy to look at Tom Brady and push him aside and say, oh, he's just the greatest of all time. But what's the process that got to that point? How come Tom Brady, at whatever age he is, 44, 45, I lose track now. I lose track of a lot of things now, Greg. But, how can he still do what he's doing without any meaningful second reaction improvisational ability? So there's a process that gets you to that point. That's what has to be discussed. And where that process starts is a full understanding of your offense and a complete understanding of defenses generally and the specific defenses that you're going to play against. Because the Bradys, the Breezes, and I know I'm speaking about Hall of Famers, but it's the process. Those guys win 99% of the time before the ball is snapped. They know where they're going with the ball. They're not surprised. They're not getting a free rusher that all of a sudden, wow, where did he come from? So I think Mac Jones ultimately is that kind of quarterback. Mm-hmm. Is he a non-athlete? No. Is he going to make a career out of running around? No. We saw this past week against the Jets where he didn't make a few plays where he left the pocket. Can he do that on occasion? Sure. Is he going to make special plays doing that? Not likely. So yeah, he has to learn all the nuances and the subtleties and the disciplines of the position so that the ball can come out of his hand. I think he can do that. But now getting to your second point about making quote unquote special throws, I think that's an unknown. I think we know he can make all the layups. He can make those throws, and he knows where to go with the football, and he's decisive. He doesn't get stuck in the pocket where you feel like, okay, what's he going to do now? The question is, can he drive the football? Tom Brady's arm, in my view, clearly got stronger as his career progressed. And in fact, I would even argue that Tom Brady right now is throwing the ball than he ever has, which is remarkable. I would say Drew Brees' arm got a little stronger too after his surgery. There was a stretch there where Brees threw the ball pretty well. He would throw those seam balls in New Orleans really, really well. So can Mac Jones' arm get stronger? It doesn't have to be a gun. And then I think the factor that a lot of people don't think about is your coach and the team and what the whole system is. I guess we don't know what the situation in New England will be 5 years from now, 7 years from now. But I think obviously Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels have a great, great feel for this kind of quarterback because Brady was essentially that kind of quarterback, certainly early in his career as he evolved. And they have a great feel for presenting defined reads and throws for the quarterback within the structure of the pass game. So that fits exactly what Mac Jones is. And they knew that when they drafted him. This is not this, you're there, I'm not. This is not a surprise to them. What Mac Jones, the way in which he's playing, I'm not talking about the production, the way in which he is playing is not a surprise to the Patriots.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, internally, it's funny. You don't hear a lot of the noise that goes on around here, but there are certain people, around that just don't think he's going to be, that he's not special enough. And they brought up the Patriots perhaps, trading for Deshaun Watson or something like that. And like what I think they miss is
what does special mean? And I'm not knocking you, but you have to define what that means.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can just say that internally, they are thrilled at where Mac Jones is in his development. And that's what excites me, that he's only 7 games into his career. And some of the things that he does and his understanding, like just week 1, I mean, knowing Brian Flores like I do and knowing his scheme and having seen it for years up here, they basically, and the Patriots said this too, they threw the kitchen sink at Mac Jones in week 1. And even Brian Flores got to the podium after the game and he's like, that kid's pretty good. He did because Brian Flores, he threw the kitchen sink at the kid week 1, his first start.
It's funny you say that, and I'll do a little self-promotion now because I did a piece on Mac Jones for the matchup show this week, so I hope people will watch it, DVR, or do whatever they do, And I showed a play from week 1 because I thought it was very reflective of what he is. And you may remember the play. He hit Aguilar along the left sideline for, 24, 25 yards. And it was a play in which the Dolphins showed single high man coverage pre-snap and then spun the coverage to cover 2 just as the ball was snapped. I don't know if you remember this play.
Yeah, I do.
And the play design was to work inside the numbers. They had mirrored crosses by Myers and Henry, and they had a sit route by Kendrick Bourne. And the coverage, when they spun to cover 2, took all that away. And actually, Xavier Howard was kind of peeking inside, almost in a trap technique to take away, to almost bait Mac Jones into throwing that sort of sit route to Bourne. And Jones saw the whole thing, and he threw it over the top of Howard to Aguilar. And Aguilar, to me, and again, maybe if Josh McDaniels was listening, he'd say otherwise. I don't think Aguilar was truly part of the progression because I think it was meant to work inside. And Jones he saw everything at the right speed. He never was outside the structure of his drop and the timing of the routes, and he threw it over Howard, kind of the trap corner, to Aguilar. And you saw that week 1. That's what Mac Jones is. So to me, that's special. That's special for a rookie quarterback week 1. People tend to think of special, as you know, when a guy runs around. That's what they think is special. I've been very fortunate from people I've learned the quarterback position from that special to me is the nuance, the detail, the disciplined craft element of the position. That's special. And I think Mac Jones is far more like that and can be even better as he just continues to grow and learn.
Absolutely. Pivoting real quick, we'll see Justin Herbert this week, who, physically is just, I mean, just gifted to all hell, and he's just been tremendous since the get-go, pretty much since he's been here. What have you seen from him on film? And, I don't know, I watched a lot of the Ravens film this week.
That was a bad game. He had a really bad – may have been his worst game in the NFL. It was one of those weeks. It was one of those
I'm
weeks.
just wondering, some of the things that the Ravens did sort of pre-snap, post-snap, changing stuff. Wink Martindale, we all know is good. That's they have a good secondary there. Do you think that the Patriots, and they keep running out of bodies in the secondary. And you probably look back to last year's matchup for this game. Anything stand out as far as you, Justin Herbert, going against the Patriots this week?
Well, I think the one thing that stands out to me about Herbert is we know he's big. We know he's got a big arm. We know he can move. But I think that in many ways, what he's become, last year he was like this, and certainly this year as well, is he's very much a ball distributor as well. I mean, there are times he almost looks, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I mean it in a positive way. There are times he just looks robotic and mechanical. He drops back, he delivers the ball. He drops back, he delivers the ball. Is he capable of more than that? Of course he is. And obviously he's got a very big arm, so when he moves, he can get the ball down the field. I don't think it'll be a repeat of last year's 45-0 game, but I think Bill Belichick, I think for the most part, and it goes into far more detail than this, but for the most part, I think Coach Belichick's approach is front multiplicity, a lot of different moving parts in the front, and coverage consistency. They play a lot of man coverage. Now, that man coverage changes depending on the nature of the opponent. You get dedicated doubles in certain situations. You get a robber in certain situations. You get specific opponents that demand that Coach Belichick does different things. I would have to believe there'll be times in this game where he doubles Keenan Allen. Third downs in which he doubles Keenan Allen and tries to show it in a way that Justin Herbert doesn't see that it's going to be a double. It wouldn't surprise me if there's times he doubles Mike Williams. And again, presenting it in a way where it's not evident. So I think you'll see wrinkles like that, but I think the general philosophy of what Bill Belichick does is not going to dramatically change.
Yeah. I agree with you. What have you seen out of the Patriots in your viewing of the Patriots on film? And, we talked a lot about Mac. I mean, we know the offensive line got off to a little bit of a rough start, but I'm just wondering if anything stands out to you on film about the Patriots. One of the things I brought up since, I don't know, week 1 or week 2 is team speed seems to be apparent to me on film, especially on defense. Just what has caught your eye about the Patriots?
I could definitely see that. I don't think. I would say if you're comparing them from a talent perspective to other teams in the league on defense, you would not say that they're a fast defense. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that 100%. They're not necessarily a fast defense by any means. Now, we know that they're predominantly, and the numbers reflect this, we know that they're a sub-package defense. They hardly ever play in a base defense. They're a sub-package defense. So they play high percentage nickel and high percentage dime relative to the rest of the league. I think they'll do that this week for the simple reason that I don't think whether Eckler plays or not, and I guess we won't know that maybe until game time, I don't think they're going into this game with the idea that, hey, we better stop the run or we're not gonna win this game. So they will play out of sub defenses. You might even see in certain situations snaps with 7 DBs, which we've seen Bill Belichick do over the years, because I think that gives him, to your point, more speed, greater ability to do dedicated doubles and brackets if he chooses to go that route, which he will at given times. So, I think relative to the rest of the league, though, you wouldn't say their defensive talent is high level. So it becomes a very schematic defense. And I think he understands that. Coaches know what they have. All coaches know what they have and the best way to utilize their players. So I would expect to see you'll certainly see nickel, you'll see dime, and you might see 7 DBs.
What do you think about the other matchup, the Patriots offense against the Chargers defense? We know that the Chargers, they've played 3 of the top run offenses in the league, which will skew things a little bit, but they have not been good against the run. It seems to be a good matchup for the Patriots in that regard, and that they want to run the ball and be physical with Damian Harris, and I assume Ramondre Stevenson might be active this week to give them a dual threat. What do you think about that side of the ball?
Well, I think that's an area that they can exploit what the Chargers bring to the table. I think the Chargers are not real strong at the linebacker position. One thing about Brandon Staley is he will be very multiple with his coverage look. So, I think that the running game is a factor. I've always liked Damian Harris. He just seems to get nicked up. But I think he's a physical inside runner who's got some juice to him. So he's not just a big body, even though he's 220. He's in that range, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a pretty big dude. But I've always liked him. I think Stevenson could well be up this week. You're right. And have a nice 1-2 punch of physicality and toughness inside to sustain offense and keep Mac Jones in a position where they can be proactive with their pass game as opposed to being reactive in long yardage situations where the defense tends to have the tactical advantage. So I would expect the run game to be a factor. I think the Chargers are somewhat susceptible to that. That would not surprise me at all. And I think they want to play that way. You would know better than I, but there's no way they want Mac Jones dropping back 40 times by choice. They don't want that to happen unless, hey, look, if for whatever reason Chargers jump out 24-6 in the second quarter, everything changes. But I don't think they're going into this game with the idea that Mac Jones is going to toss it all over the yard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't seen a ton of film on the Chargers. Derwin James, with him coming back from injury this year, any difference in his play? Any difference in how Brandon Staley is using him as he's coach? And
I think Staley has said this, but the film shows it. He is the most critical piece because they play him at 4 or 5 different positions. So he can do a lot of different things, and they'll use him that way. So I guess in this game, it would depend on situational football, what the situation is in terms of how do they choose to use him. I think if the Patriots continue to play a good amount out of 12 personnel with the 2 tight ends, you'll see him at times match up, but you'll see him at times be on the ball defender in the run game. So you'll see he'll be used in multiple ways.
Interesting. All right, Greg. Well, that was a ton of information. I really appreciate it on behalf of our listeners and the readers at BostonSportsJournal.com. I greatly appreciate you coming aboard and lending your insight.
No, Greg, I enjoy it. You know how much I love talking football.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, this has been the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with our special guest, Greg Cosell. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.